folks, this is Dark Hour Paranormal. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I've got quite a treat for you tonight, and the way we're going to roll this out, we have a couple of different topics we're going to cover, but I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with my guest this evening, which I have in the green room right now with us, the one and only Jim Goodall. Now, I think that the most of you out there who are watching this program are familiar with Jim and his work, but if you aren't, by the end of this program tonight, you will be. Folks, I am very honored to have Jim on, and I should have probably had him on much earlier than what we're doing now, but we have had our experiences going out into Belize, and through this, we were able to get to know each other a little bit better. We were able to bond over, certain topics. Of course, esoterics being interwoven within that, ufology as well. But Jim has a very long history when it comes to military aircraft, the restoration of such, the building of such, the understanding of the different mechanics that go into certain military aircraft. The SR-71 happened to be my favorite airplane growing up. I just absolutely loved the Blackbird. And guess what? Jim knows this thing inside and out, upside down, and it happens to be his favorite aircraft too. I thought that was kind of cool. But, that being said, Jim is the author of no less than 29 books. He's a multiple time appearances over on Coast to Coast AM. This gentleman has been around for quite some time. He has had many friends within the circle of ufology that you would know the names right off the bat. But it's not about who you know in respect to the name. It's the fact that Jim gets to know somebody at the heart level. And that's the most important thing that I can pull out of knowing this individual here right now, and point out the sincerity and the genuine character that Jim embodies. Well, guess what? He doesn't just take that from his personal life and work it that way. He brings it into his professional life. And I think that is very unique in respect to the person that Jim is. Now, I won't keep us too long here. I want to first thank everyone for being here. Alex Oyen, Under the Veil. What's up, my friend? Good to see you, brother. I promoted our documentary that we did a couple of years ago recently, threw it in a bunch of groups, and a lot of people seem to enjoy that. And it's nice to kind of remind people that we have that out there. And I'll be doing that with a couple other documentaries, but I had to do it with Alex's first. And listen, folks, it's been a long day, so bear with me. If the thoughts don't come right to the tip of the tongue, we'll get there. I promise too much. Before we go forward, I want to throw a quick acknowledgement to the Bridgewater Triangle Paranormal Investigators for this fantastic shirt that they sent me. I'll show that to you very quickly. All right. Pretty cool graphic. These things are durable. And if you go down to the website or you go to the YouTube channel, you can find where to buy some of these shirts. And please, if you're inclined, support. These guys are fantastic. What they do in the field is awesome. I support them and back them 100% and always will. So support them if you can. Yeah, isn't it, Alex? The shirt is sick, he says, right? All right, folks, without further ado, we're going to get this going here. I'm going to bring John, and we're going to jump right into the meat of what we're going to talk about tonight. So, without further ado, God, we got to get a better catchphrase, right? That's been used over and over again. Introducing, no, because I know a lot of you know him. Well, here we go, folks. I'd like you to welcome, with whole hearts and open arms, Jim Goodall to the show this evening. Jim, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, how's it going? It was hot and miserable today. I live in the desert in Tucson. I think we're going to hit like 45 days at or above 100 degrees, but it's supposed to drop to 98 or 97 next Monday. And we finally got some rain after not having anything at all this year to speak of. And we're in the desert, but this is our monsoon season, and we usually get 4 to 10 inches of rain during this 5-month period. But oh, wow. Now you got your T-shirt from your guys, and I was visiting a dear friend of mine, and I said, "Hey, can you make me one of these?" And Bob Lazar got up from the kitchen table, walked across to his lab, as he calls it. It's an incredible place. And about 10 minutes later, he came back, and he was still warm because he had to dry the ink. because he made it right then and there. And it's just, I've known him before he went to work out in the desert. But one thing I have to laugh, I was looking at your 3 items up in top: Belize, ufology, and submarines. Now, we can do 3 hours on Belize, we can do 3 hours on ufology, and we can do probably 3 or 4 hours on submarines. And if you want to go to Blackbird, I can go 10 hours. So
easily,
Yeah.
at least, my friend. Well, I figured I'd pick something that we could certainly get into very quickly, but I know how extensive some of these subjects are, and your knowledge far surpasses most people's who's even researched, some of these subjects in a sense. I mean, you have gotten to the very core of all 3 of those things definitively.
I started digging in and snooping in our government probably starting in '68. I'm 78 years old, so I've been around for a long time. And I've been blessed with an incredibly good memory. I can remember events depending what triggers. Music triggers my memory. It's like a time machine. But I was having a cup of coffee and a cigarette with my mom. This is had to be 40, 50 years ago. I said, "Mom, I got a question." I said, "I can see you. I can see Dad. I can see my Aunt Mary, my Uncle Albert, my Uncle Frank, my Uncle Sal, and just, down the line, but I don't see any of my cousins." And I described the place, and my mom was absolutely shocked. He said, "Well, who told you about this?" And I said, "Nobody told me about it. It's something I remembered." He said, "You can't remember it." And I said, "Why? What do you mean I can't remember it?" Says, "You were only 18 months old when we were at this park, and it's the only time we've ever been there." So I said, "Well, I still remember it." And I can remember bits and pieces. I hear a song that I first heard. It was Teresa Brewer, put a nickel in Nickelodeon. 1952, I think it was. If I hear that song, I know exactly
Wow.
where I was when I heard the song. And it's freaky, and it's a blessing, but it's also a real pain because someone can step on my toes or do me wrong, and 40 years later I'll still remember it like it happened yesterday. I don't hold grudges, but I've been
funny.
very, very lucky.
That,
You said you don't.
but that's so curious. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was waiting for you. You were going to comment on my memory and the fact I don't hold grudges. Oh, I think you froze.
Yes, I mean, I know there's a little lag here, so apologies for that. I don't mean to talk over you in any way, but we discussed a little bit in respect to time being some sort of variable, kind of fixed within music. So you listen to a song. There's an element of time travel. It brings you back. Now maybe your body doesn't go back to that exact period. It doesn't need to. I mean, the mind immediately is brought back to that time. And yes, the tactile senses that were there, they come rushing back into your consciousness. And sure enough,
even the smells,
right there.
even the smells.
Mm-hmm.
I know what people were wearing. I know what if there was anybody around me, I know what they were wearing. I know what time of the day it was. And it just that goes along with some of the other crazy stuff about my life. But when I started digging things up on our government, when I was trying to get information on the Blackbird. Now I saw my first Blackbird on the ramp at Edwards Air Force Base on March 10th, 1964, and I've never been the same since. And so when I got out of the service, and I got out after 5 years in '66, and I'm living in LA, and I just got a bug up my rear, and I said, I got to see if I can get any photos of the Blackbird. So I wrote the Lockheed Skunk Works. I wrote Secretary of the Air Force, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Secretary of Defense, and the Central Intelligence Agency. I wanted 8x10 color or black and white, full frame of a Blackbird in the sky or on the ground. I didn't care. And I was willing to pay the going rate, which was I think $9 and something for color 8x10 glossy. And no one ever responded. their unofficial policy was not to cooperate. So because they didn't cooperate, I started digging. And the deeper I dug, the more I found out. The more I found out, the deeper I dug. So over the course of the last 60 years, because it's almost 60 years since I saw my first blackbird.
Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah, I have acquired a tremendous amount of history on the program. When I started digging stuff up, there was no internet. There were no cell phones. If you're going to make a phone call in this long distance, it can be big bucks if you speak for any length of time. But fortunately, I was blessed. I had traveling jobs, and they brought me all over the country. But I would track people down, call them up, arrange for me to be there. I would know what my schedule was going to be a month in advance. Yeah, so I'd sit down and talk to these people, and everything kept falling in place over the years. And again, I'm blessed. I have a really good memory. One of the if the Air Force, Lockheed, CIA, Department of Defense, and everybody else associated with the Blackbird program, if they would have given me a dozen or half a dozen 8x10s, I would have been happy. I would have never dug into spooky airplanes after that. I wouldn't. No, maybe I would have, but you really can't tell. But I would never have met John Andrews from Testers. I would have never met John Lear, one of my dear friends, who John Andrews introduced me to John Lear. And because of my 45 year friendship with the late John Lear, I met Bob Lazar. And that all by itself was just a kick in the butt. So, because of the stonewalling of the federal government and Lockheed in general and the defense industry, I'm not anybody special. I'm a guy who likes airplanes. I'm a guy who likes things that go bump in the night. I'm also an American patriot. I have 27 years of military service. But when I ask my government, who works for you and I, when I ask for them, I'd like to, through Freedom of Information Act or whatever, or I'd like to get some photos of such and such. And I don't hear anything. Or I said, we went through our files and there's nothing available for release on that subject matter. And it's just, if it's not a weapon of war, if the coding isn't in there, if you don't have the blueprints and all the specifications, a picture of an airplane or a device, other than showing you what it looks like, shows our enemy absolutely nothing. I know when they were pulling out the Dark Star with Top Gun Maverick, apparently the Russians repositioned a satellite over Edwards Air Force Base and over Palmdale, and that part they're all in the same neighborhood, because something was being rolled out and they thought it was a real airplane. So they're constantly looking, and again, I have never been the same since I saw my first Blackbird. I was 18 years old. I joined the Air Force because I loved airplanes. I joined the Air Force because I just loved the smell of burnt, jet fuel, and just the excitement. I love machines, and I think it's probably why I like what I like. I mean, I have trains, planes, and automobiles, and UFOs, and submarines.
Love that movie. And well, you got to throw those in the mix too, right? Let me ask you a question here. I mean, quite some time ago, the SR-71 Blackbird, this was a very classified project, and eventually it was put forward and declassified. With what we've talked about, and I guess we'll just jump into ufology at the moment to begin with here. With the technology that we seem to have in our possession, and we've heard many different sources cite this, and I'm not just speaking about the current whistleblowers that are out there. There's a few things wrong with those narratives, but we won't get into that at the moment. But nonetheless, there are others who have mentioned, yes, we have this technology. And of course, Bob Lazar is one of those people, as controversial as a figure as he is. Do you think that we'll see the way that the Blackbird was rolled out and declassified, do you think we'll see in the near future some of this technology that has been hidden from us dealing with propulsion systems? Or is it similar to what you've mentioned to me about submarines, where they're there, but the propulsion system is classified, but we know about the submarine, we know its capabilities. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm at a loss for why they're keeping UFO information, photographs, and whatever classified. I mean, before they even say we're going to classify this, anything comes up of a real UFO, we're going to classify it. Why? If it's not from it's not from China, not from Russia, not from North Korea or Iran, what are we worried about? And if they can travel, if the beams, or maybe they're coming through a wormhole, I don't know. But if they can travel across the universe, that means all they'd have to do is look at us and press a button, poof, Earth is gone. I mean, if you can travel across the universe, you have the ability to take us out.
100%. Should we be afraid? I mean, should we be thinking about that in respect to? No, okay.
I mean, no more fearful of walking down any neighborhood during the day, almost anywhere. There's a few I would say I'm too white. That's not, probably wouldn't be a good idea. And I know what that feels like. I was a night repairman in the Compton Watts area back in the 60s, shortly after the Watts riots. I mean, our building, the Axminster Exchange building, was like a 10-story central office. And if you look up, you can, even today, if you drove down Vernon and you looked up on, it's right off of Crenshaw, you looked up to this building, you would see bullet holes in the concrete structure, because it was right in the middle of the war zone. I mean, my roommate was there during the riots, and he said he was in the back of a armored personnel carrier manning a 60 caliber or 50 caliber M60, and with orders to shoot. No, I mean, they didn't, but it's really intimidating. So I think I lost track where I was going. I was thinking about.
No, that's fine. Let me bring you back around. Based on what you were just answering there, I don't know why you say they would keep some of this stuff secret.
Yeah.
World, right? I mean, I think we've definitely come up with a few good reasons as to why they would want to do this. We talk about power. We talk about paradigm shifts. We talk about having to share certain we'd call esoteric information today, which might be commonplace for those who work with it, having reconnaissance some of this stuff and then realizing, or even interacting, as we've heard many times before, with extraterrestrials or extraterrestrial cultures. It would change everything. But, the way I look at it is similar to, there's a nation across the big pond, okay? And let's say, I'm going to use Christopher Columbus as an example, because he was an explorer, who says, all right, I'm going to go across this big pond. There's a good chance they fall off, but hell, I'm going to do it anyway. And so they go there, find themselves in a different, part of the world. So what happens then? It becomes more expansive, right? So now we have more land to work with. We have different areas of the globe that we now understand we're not falling off the side of it. There are some people out there that still think the Earth is flat. That's a totally different matter altogether. But that being said, if we were to explore space, which is the next frontier, I don't know if it's the last one, but it's definitely the next frontier, I still see an expansion. So my question is, why won't those who have the know-all allow us to expand as a civilization and become more universal?
Well, I mean, the one thing about security, and when things get classified, a good part of the time, the reason why things get classified and stay classified is to keep the bean counters in Congress from figuring out what they're doing. Now, that doesn't always work. I remember a number of years ago, and this had to be, I don't know, it was before 9/11 or I think it was after 9/11, that the National Reconnaissance Office was going through looking for whatever they misplaced, and they realized, oh, here's our $6 billion slush fund we forgot about. Now, how in the heck do you forget about $6 billion? I don't care who you are. Well, the AOC may qualify for that. And there's a number of, Mitch McConnell would probably qualify. I don't remember. But how do you do that? So majority, and I had above top secret clearance for 27 years. I never saw anything that I saw that was, oh, gee whiz, I'm really privileged to see this stuff. No, when I was in the Pentagon during Desert Storm, I was a historian. I was an Air Force 9 level in history. I was an E9 slot, but I got retired as an E7. And everything I'm looking at, I see things that are for eyes only. I think, above top secret, compartmental stuff. Anything the president saw or Schwarzkopf saw, I saw first, or I saw after they transmitted it. And I did that every morning. I had a document or a 3-ring binder about this big for every day, starting with day 1 of Desert Shield when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And it was all the way that way until until the end of hostilities. And so I didn't see anything in there other than there was some war planning and where they're marshaling some aircraft or some equipment. That would be considered sensitive, not necessarily classified, but sensitive, because the Russian satellites that were probably assisting them are seeing the same things that our satellites are seeing. But it didn't make any sense. I mean, I literally looked for call signs that didn't make any sense. I looked at there was 3,000 aircraft a day were in the air during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I looked at absolutely every single call sign. I looked at every aircraft designation type, and I saw absolutely nothing that I didn't already know about. But there was stuff that was classified.
Do you think when you go into war, right? I think a lot of what we're going to see initially is the conventional means, so forth. Because if they were to bring out something that, I don't know, let's say, Tesla's death ray. Let's say they had some sort of, item up and able to, dial in the way that Tesla had reported that he was able to do with his machine. That sort of implicates them into a whole different tier of what the fuck do you have, dude? You know what I mean? So even to use that in war, I think they would use something nuclear before they used something that was cleaner, but would do something similar in way of destruction. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm looking at other countries here too.
I don't think, I know, I can't say I know for sure, but I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts that under no circumstances would Russia and Putin consider using nuclear weapons. They know what the consequences are. I mean, they can rattle their swords and jump up and down and shake their fist and, take their shoe off and beat the top of the desk at the UN. But the commitment to, well, this is it, boys and girls, because once the big one goes up against someone who can retaliate with a big one, it's going to be like in the movie War Games, where the simulation, all of a sudden you just started seeing missiles going back and forth. We have, on any given day, we have at least one Ohio boat in the Pacific Ocean and one Ohio boat in the Atlantic on patrol. Now, the Ohio boat is a ballistic missile submarine. They're 560 feet long. They're taller than the Seattle Space Needle if they put it end to end. The hull is 42 feet in diameter and it weighs 18,000 tons submerged. There's about 160 people on board.
That's a good.
And they had 24 missile tubes, but because of SALT, Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty 2, they had to cut that back to 20 because they're only allowed to have so many ways to send a nuclear weapon to your neighbor. So they had to put ballast in the 4 middle tubes. But at any given time in the northern, the North Pacific area of responsibility, it's 150,000 square miles. There's an Ohio boat cruising at 4 knots, going back and forth, zigzag, then they go north and south. Every day, and sometimes multiple times a day, they will stop over a point in the ocean where there are sensors that have been put there. They know within a few seconds of degree of arc, longitude and latitude wise, where we're at. And they'll go over there and they'll update their INS platform, the inertial navigation system. And they have 2 of them. They're about size of a large washing machine. And they go in there and they update the INS system. On the first day you're on patrol, the error rate's probably 10 to 40 feet from being on target. But with a 270 kiloton hydrogen bomb, close counts. But when you're, if you can bring that, maybe it's a mile. I don't know. I haven't fired off any nuclear weapons lately, so I don't know. And neither have we, so we don't know.
None in the backyard? No, on a Sunday? Okay,
no.
I get it. Okay.
But as the accuracy of our weapons improve, and before GPS and before before your inertial navigation systems and the areas in the ocean that have been set up specifically for updating your inertial navigation package, you had to do it by pulling it out of your butt and hoping it was right. And of course, we never fired one in anger. There was one that did launch a Polaris A2 over the Johnson Islands, and it's the only time anyone has detonated a nuclear weapon being fired from a submarine. So we proved the ability and the concept that we can do that. But if you get more accurate with weapons, whether it's a GPS guided smart bomb or it's a 1.5 megaton B-61-12, you can take your error rate down from miles or thousands of feet or hundreds of feet, and you can get it down to feet or inches, that means the weapon yield can be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to destroy the entire city if you just want to take out the McDonald's on the corner of First and Main. You could use a small enough weapon and small enough device to eliminate that target if you can hit within a couple of feet of where you want to hit. So at the beginning
Jim, very quickly. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but very quickly, this is a great time. I want to just let everybody know where they can find more of this information that you've researched. Very quickly, Jim has very generously donated one of his books to me, okay? And this is called The U.S. Navy's Fast Attack Submarines, Seawolf Class, and Virginia Class. And I'm going to show that book very quickly here. It's a fantastic read. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the pictures and what have you. It's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I can't say enough about this. I mean, just look at the back of this, okay? Look how gorgeous it is. I know that the green screen's kind of playing with your eyes a little bit on that. But honest to God, this book is full of so much information involving these 2 classes. And, you go from the ground up here. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jim, but I wanted to let everybody know that they could go and find this book that you've written, and it will cover exactly what you're talking about much more extensively, of course. Yeah. But yes, please go and check this out.
If you, and that's volume 2. Volume 1's on the Los Angeles class and Know Your Adversary. So I also cover the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and the Iranians in volume 1. Volume 3, when I'm just waiting to get on an SSGN, they took 4 of the early Ohio boats and converted them to arsenal boats. They each carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles each. And a Tomahawk can hit plus or minus maybe 3 feet of where it wants to go. So it's you do a swarm of those things going over.
It's incredible.
China or over North Korea. I know, the fat Nork from Kim Un, whatever his last name is, Young. So I'm gonna, I can nuke Guam. I can probably nuke Hawaii. And he said, and my thought was, well, you're going to have one shot out of it, and then your country is going to turn into green glass. And that's, they would. There was nothing, and we could actually do it with conventional weapons, just with what we have in the Pacific. During when,
Sorry, go ahead.
When North Korea was rattling its sabers here a while back, they moved the USS Michigan, which is the second Ohio boat built, and one of the first ones to be modified into a arsenal boat. Now, generally, they're down on patrol. They're not on the surface, but they moved the Michigan to Guam for 800 days. That was a temporary move location, and guys couldn't bring their family with them. 800 days is a long friggin' time.
Yeah, close to 3 years. Anyway,
2.5 years, and just to show them. And then was it last week, the USS Kentucky, which is an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, pulled into South Korea, and the Norks were going crazy over that, and then one of the fast attacks went in there as well, and it's just he can rattle his saber all he wants. I just read, I was reading something on North Korea here a couple of days ago. In the country of North Korea, they only have 400 miles of paved road.
I'm not surprised.
The rest are, dirt or gravel roads. But
interesting to hear nonetheless.
Yeah. If you're interested in knowing anything about the B-2, the Lockheed Skunk Works, the Blackbird, submarines, the SR-71, whatever, you can go to Amazon and look for books by James C. Goodall. And you'll get my hardbound books. And if you go in and do the same thing in books by Jim Goodall, you'll get off most of my softbound ones. Because once I started doing hardbound, I became a James instead of a Jim, or a Hey You.
Might have been a tear up. That's You've written so many books, and your knowledge on this topic is so extensive. It's hard to wrap our minds around how one person has done so much research, but you backed it by experience. And that is what makes it more significant than just a researcher going into the field, looking through things with the intention of the research at the helm. Man, you were right there in the mechanics of it. You were there in the creation of it to a certain degree. And of course, your restoration work also has a big history behind it, which we could certainly get into at a certain point. But before we down that road, you mentioned, in passing, turn it a green glass, right? So within archaeological sites, we've found some of what we'd consider to be sand or stone that has been exposed to heat, such an intense heat that it has formed glass. And we've seen this in Egypt, comes to mind first, but there are many other places that have this particular element there that we can't quite place exactly. We know that something has been exposed through high heat, but whatever cataclysmic event, we can't really put our finger on it. What are your thoughts on what may have happened about 12 back to what we've
started to garble
seen with that coming about?
Yeah,
I'll just phrase what I said very quickly. So within the green glass that you had mentioned, we found some of this high heat exposed elements that seem to have formed a glass-like substance from 12,000 years ago, around that time, 13,000, 12,000 years ago. And we can say that there has been some sort of cataclysmic event that, certain areas were exposed to this high heat enough that it melts the sand and stone into this glass. What are your thoughts on that cataclysmic activity or event that may have occurred, whatever it was, something happened back 12,000 years ago? Do you have any thoughts on that? We've seen this in Egypt specifically.
When you and I were with Jared and the group were in Belize, I was talking to one of the archaeologists there at Nimli Punt, and
yes,
these are all graduate students, working on their masters or working on their PhD, and we were talking about the age of the Mayan pyramids and what they represent, and they're leaning towards a new thought. They're saying that the pyramids themselves were occupied by the Mayans 2,000 years ago. That's a minimum age for the pyramids. They think that the pyramids are between 20,000 to 200,000 years old, and that the Mayans found them abandoned back 2,500 years ago and repurposed them for their own use. And now, the other thing I learned when we were there is from about just south of Mexico City to the northern part of Colombia, they now feel, based on what they found out in Nicaragua, there's the boys, the brothers.
The boys are here. What's going on?
Yeah.
Third Phase of Moon. Hey. Thank you. I'll just take the 1 second here. Thank you so much, Third Phase of Moon. God, you've always supported me. I know you supported Jim in so many different ways. Thank you for the $10 super chat. They say, keep up the great work, Jim and Michael. And just on the heels, or just before that, Mr. Catfish in with a $5 super chat saying, holding it down as usual, DHP. Mate, I appreciate your support. Long-time supporter, of course. But hey, we got Third Phase of Moon in the house as well. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah. So it's now where in the heck was I?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry about it. We were talking about the archaeologists had mentioned that the
from Belize, that when the country of Nicaragua decided they were going to do a LiDAR scan for the first time in about 800 square mile area near their largest excavated site. And they really didn't expect to see anything. They was hoping to see some roads and whatever. They found 60,000 structures under 60,000 structures. And so their mindset is changing completely. And the fact that they're also saying that there was between 10 to 20 million inhabitants in this area that's it's populated, but not with 10 to 20 million people. I mean, Belize only has 365,000 residents. I mean, there was more in the suburb of Bloomington, Minnesota, I think, than in the country of Belize. Pardon, you were garbled there for a second. I couldn't hear you.
It's been expressed. No, I was just saying that it's been expressed that 20 million people used to live in what we know as the Amazon. So even though that's quite a large area for what it is, when you look into it today, yes, you find the structures. There were according to certain researchers, and yes, some of them more prevalent than others. When they were clear cutting some of these places, they were finding the structures. They were so prevalent. They were everywhere. They just decided to knock them down to create the fields that they needed for their agriculture and so forth. Within those observations, it's been surmised that 20 million people lived in the Amazon. So when you talk about some of these ancient cultures and you look at Belize and you talk about the site that you're mentioning here, which is one of dozens in that particular country itself, it's not out of the realm of possibility that many people did thrive. I mean, look at the way we live today. Maybe there were more people just concentrated in different areas, and we're just starting to realize that now. I think there's a slight bit of ignorance that we've carried within looking back through that looking glass and saying, okay, obviously we've made the mistake of things were more primitive. In certain ways, they may have been the way that we live today. But if you really look at it in depth, being more in tune with nature or something more, again, what we would call esoteric, which is actually a natural right of the human experience and, life in general on this planet, there's a different interpretation to be held. So it's very curious that people in Belize sort of understand how much things have changed for those cultures as time has gone on, which different cultures that they surmise have been to these sites. And what perplexes me the most, Jim, is what you had mentioned not long ago, and that is that most of these cultures have come and found the pyramids already. They didn't create them. So that means somebody else did, or something else did. Do you believe that, let's throw something out here for fun. Do you believe that extraterrestrials had any involvement in creating any of these pyramids that we know today, some of the most notable sites? What are your thoughts on that theory?
I think because there's the similarities are all over the world, whether you're in Thailand, whether you're in China, whether you're in South America, Central America, places in North America. You have Egypt, you have some of the ancient structures in the UK, Stonehenge, for example. And I mean, it can go on and on and on and on. I think, and again, this is my personal opinion, but it is my opinion. I think the aliens have been coming here for hundreds of thousands of years. We may be seeds. We also may be aliens that were brought. An Adam and Eve or an ark type thing would come in, found this planet because their planet was dying, or one of their planets in their federation was dying, and they need to populate the place. We have Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal and early man. There's a lot of blank spaces from one species of Homo erectus, to Homo sapien.
Oh God, yes.
And what say that they didn't come out and wipe out most everybody, put in some new, seed pods, if you want to call them, very, very fertile, men and women, regardless whether they were cavemen-like or whether they were sophisticated ones that we see in fairy tales. I don't know, but there's some speculation that we were, we were placed on this planet along with all the creatures were placed on this planet as a preserve. I think they wanted to see what humans would do if left unsupervised. And like most 2-year-olds, we get ourselves in trouble.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well,
So
there's a whole sandbox theory that goes into that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Now our galaxy, the Milky Way, is about 4 billion years old. The James Webb Space Telescope just blew out all of the theory on the existence of the universe. We have it as, this was a month ago. It's been changed, I think. We have it that the universe that we know of, that we can see with our deep space probes and whatever before Webb, was 13.8 billion years old. That's when the first masses of dust came together in such concentration, and gravity started pulling together, crushing the center part of it, and it started nuclear fusion. And that's what stars are. Stars are big hydrogen bombs up in the sky that are constant. So all you nuke fanatics out there that, you go outside to put your solar panels out there, they're being radiated by nuclear fusion, so, which is true. Okay, where were we going? I have a problem with my brain. At any given moment, I have about 10 things going full blast, and they're going zzz. And if all of a sudden someone says squirrel, it's still back there, but I just changed lanes and maybe even headed back the other direction. So I lose track of where I'm at. It comes back to me after a couple minutes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the flow of the conversation is so natural here, and it's very similar to well, I think we get a little bit more in depth when we're talking, face to face, but, same sort of idea. There's a natural flow to what we're talking about here, going in from one subject to the other. And I really appreciate that. With that in mind, we talk about ufology today. Obviously you had your hand and your mind in this subject for a very long time. We could talk about key players like John Lear or Travis Walton, any of these people we could bring up. And it's just, there's a story behind it. In respect to the evidence that we need now, in your opinion, do you think this is going to be provided to us at some point within our lifetime? I mean, this could be in the next 20, 30 years, right?
I can say with some certainty that there's going to be an event, hopefully before the end of the year, that'll blow everybody's socks off. And I've been informed that I will be given about 24 hours notice of when it's going to hit the fan, whatever it is. And I got it from the horse's mouth. So it could be exciting.
A possibility. Yeah, go ahead.
It's going to be very, very exciting. It is going to take what happened yesterday in Congress and turn it on its ear. I can't go any farther than that, but
of course,
it's going to be exciting. There's a
look. I mean, what we need is a paradigm shift. We need an entirely new mentality when it comes to approaching these subjects. And I think that whatever evidence anyone can offer, wherever it comes from, if we can sit down and say, yes, this is evidential in respect to what we're talking about here, we can use this as a support to stand on. That's going to be a real step in the staircase that, obviously we're going to be climbing certain flights for some time. It goes, much further. And of course, we can't know everything about what military has done up to a certain point because, they say they were 100 years ahead of our time. And this was back in maybe the 80s and 90s in respect to their technology. And now it's been stated, and I've mentioned this before, that, they have technology and methodology that goes beyond imagination.
Well,
that's unbelievable to me in a sense, but I understand it,
I mean, I've said this to everybody because it's probably the most important statement that I've ever heard directly to me from someone I know would know and someone I know isn't full of bull. And that was a phone call that I made to Mr. Ben Rich, who was the recently retired president of the Lockheed Skunk Works. Ben and I don't even know how this happened, but I think it's because of John Andrews. We became pen pals, more actually telephone pals. It got to the point where I'd call his office and his wife, June, would recognize my voice. She said, Mr. Rich's office said, "Hi there. Oh, Mr. Goodall, just a second. I'll connect you with Mr. Rich." I wouldn't even have to ask. But about 10 days before he died, I think he died in 94, I called him up to see how he's doing. He was dying of stage 4 esophageal cancer because of the chemicals and the solvents used in stealth coatings when they were building the F-117 and Have Blue and Senior Prom and a few other ones there. And we were talking. We talked for about 45 minutes. I can tell he was starting to wear out, and he's a slightly built man and frail, I guess would be a good word for it. Especially when you look at some of his replacements. I mean, Jeff Babion could probably, who I had the book signing with, could probably bench press 350 pounds. Ben, not so much. But so we were talking with about our old friend John Andrews, and he was disappointed about the Tester Aurora model, the XR7 penetrator. He said, well, the liquid methane fueled Mach 12 aircraft would have to have a volume at least 4 times the size of that model. So what Ben told me, Aurora was liquid methane, went Mach 12, and would look something like the tester model, but would have to have a fuselage about 4 times the volume to have enough liquid methane in there. So, and we were talking about, and I think John had just passed away, I believe. And he said, Jim, we have things out in the desert, and he wasn't referring to Area 51. S4 maybe, Dugway Proving Grounds maybe, but not Area 51 proper. He said, Jim, we have things out in the desert that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. And he knows that I can comprehend a hell of a lot. So it'd have to be pretty amazing. And he said, if you've seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort.
Okay, hold on 1 second right there. Okay, with that statement, okay, that we have done everything you've seen in Star Trek and so forth, okay, would that not be some sort of support for those who claim to be part of a secret space program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And at he was at a banquet. He's a keynote speaker at a banquet at the postgraduate School of Aeronautics at UCLA. And in his prepared text, as he's going through talking about aerospace and his involvement with the Skunk Works, and you can search it, it's there. He said, "We have the ability to take ET home." Now think about that statement. This is 30 years ago. This is not last month. This wasn't Wednesday, yesterday. This was about 30 years ago. And he said, we have the ability to take ET home, but the government will not allow the information to be declassified. I mean,
that's a powerful bit of technology.
And it's coming from any single person on the planet who would know all the secrets as it pertains to flight, aviation or space flight or going into the unknown. It would be the president or vice president, general manager of the Lockheed Skunk Works. And Ben was Kelly's right-hand man. Plus, the famous John Andrews letter that Ben Rich wrote on his corporate letterhead as president of the Lockheed Skunk Works. It was to John Andrews. He said, because John asked him, do you and Kelly, referring to Kelly Johnson, believe in UFOs? Now, there's 2 categories, man-made and extraterrestrial. And it was handwritten on his corporate letterhead. And he said, dear John, says, both Kelly and I are firm believers in both categories. We refer to ours as unfunded opportunities. Now, that was June or July 1986.
My God.
So, wow. I mean, you gotta scratch your head and saying, what the F? We have this stuff. Why aren't we using it? What happened to all the Tesla stuff where you can get, free, really free energy? Zero-sum energy.
That's curious. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the greatest mysteries. And we've heard people say that it's been divided amongst different interest groups when we talk about Tesla's technology. Although not as formidable in certain circles, obviously, as Tesla was. I mean, I had a very similar question with Preston Nichols when he died. Where the hell did all that equipment that he had allegedly taken from the Montauk Project go? Where is it?
In someone's basement, or it's probably in that warehouse you saw in Raiders of the Lost Ark, I mean, I honestly believe something like that exists, and that's where all the real goodies are hidden. I mean, it's.
I mean, you just look at the Vatican, and even though it's not in the same exact vein, I mean, there's supposedly a lot of things hidden underneath there that would shed light on history at the very least.
Well, one of the,
whatever technology.
One of the things, you have a very, very powerful lobby that would prevent the oil and gas industry to go kaput.
Mm-hmm.
If all of a sudden you had free energy, well, gee, we don't need coal. We do from, we need certain types of coal for making good steels. I mean, you have your major utility companies that are worth billions of dollars. You wouldn't have to worry about nuclear waste. Of course, who's the idiot from Nevada, the senator? He got his his clock cleaned. They just renamed the airport from McCarran to him.
Mm-hmm.
They built the Yucca Mountain low-level nuclear storage facilities. They spent $25 billion in over
Jesus.
a couple decades. And the environmentalists came in, oh, you can't do it there. Well, they already have, 1,100 holes in the ground and each hole is probably a couple thousand pounds of radioactive plutonium and rock. It's right down the road from Yucca Mountain. They're worried about groundwater contamination. There isn't any in those areas. That's why it's the middle of a desert. That's why Las Vegas is along the Colorado River and not in the middle of the Nevada test site. I mean, because there was water available both underground and via the river, and then the dam when it went in, Hoover Dam. But you have the power industry, you have the oil and gas industry. Transportation would be totally different. Now,
but that's the thing. It's a whole different market.
Yeah,
if you were to make free energy, I still think that they could make money off of that. Believe me, I have ideas.
Elon can make a lot of money off it because he can make money off it. Selling ice cubes to the Eskimos. I think.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's I don't know. I worry about our country. I really do when I think about it. But there are too many wealthy power brokers that have their fingers and toes and stuff that would disappear if all of a sudden we had free energy. If a lot of Nikola Tesla's inventions were to come about, if according to Ben Rich, if we have the ability to send ET home, that means we can go across the universe in a blink of an eye. I asked Bob Lazar, how do you go from one end of the universe to the other? And he said, this is the universe. We're here. This is the other side. This is 13.8 billion light years away. You focus on it. You release the energy. You're there. There's no time interval.
See, we understand that. I mean, third phase of Moon, myself, Rich Giordano, I think Dr. J was involved. A bunch of the panel members about 2.5 years ago covered an entire segment that we created on time travel, and that was one of the most prevalent and most struggling for the word, probably the most realistic possibility of how something like that works, where you have the bending of time and you're connecting these 2 points, right? And this is where we get the wormhole and the time tunnels and so forth. That really don't occupy much space. They're just a connectivity of sort. There's some sort of connection point between one place in the universe and another. And again, we look at this as linearly as we possibly can, but at the end of the day, we can't find any real true linearity about it. So that's very different. But the power that would take to get there, the energy, I mean, just the amplitude of this energy that you would need to create this. I mean, we think in our scheme of things, within the architectures that we've seen technologically, this would be an impossibility. But I know, as much as you do, Jim, that there are many people who have expressed something much different and even given us little tidbits of what those physics and sciences might look like behind it without the whole picture. It's enough to look out the window and say, I see the edge of the forest, even though you can't necessarily get there through the closed glass. And, I could probably come up with a better metaphor, but, that's the idea. idea, I think.
You know, one of the things I mentioned earlier, you know, technology can really screw up your opinion of things and how you see things. The James Webb Telescope is a prime example. For quite some time, all the brilliant minds in physics and astronomy and everything else said the universe is 13.8 billion years old from first light, Big Bang. Well, the James Webb Space Telescope took it, you know, has an image of a 4 galaxy set. They're almost, you know, almost like a pair of dice on number 4. They're all evenly spaced in a square. Mm-hmm. According to the redshift, which is very accurate because it determines how far away this object is, it's not at 13.8 billion years, which is the edge of the universe as we know it. It's another billion years older than that.
Yeah.
Now they're saying that the universe as we know it may be between 40 and 60 billion years across. Billion
now again, try to wrap your head around that. It's like trying to describe what the experience of infinity is.
Well, I mean, I was a docent at Peak National Observatories for a couple of years, and it's the largest collection of optical telescopes in one place in the world. They have 22 optical telescopes, everything from a 12-inch to a 4-meter, which is 13-foot primary mirror. That's the Mayall. They have a half a dozen 2.1-meter telescopes, of which one of them was used by Caltech using adaptive optics, looking on a 5-year project, looking for exoplanets in a very small part of our Milky Way. And in this very, very small part of the Milky Way, about the size of a postage stamp if you put it up to the sky, because we only see stars in the Milky Way. Maybe I think it's all we can see with the naked eye. Oh my God, my mind just went away. Oh, crumb. Where was I at? You weren't taking notes. I wasn't taking notes either.
Trajectory. I was sitting Shiva with you in the passenger seat. I don't know, but
yeah. No, I see. It'll come back.
The universe is much older. You know, this James Webb Telescope has really already expanded our minds. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just before I left, I have bad knees, and it was all up and down, and it's at 7,000 feet. To go from the one telescope, you come down to the visitor center, and they go up to another one, and back and forth. Mm-hmm. And my knees couldn't take it, and but just before I left, they announced that there was going to be a pop and pizza party at the NOAO, which is the National Optical Astronomy Observatory headquarters at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. And all astronomers, technicians, and docents were asked to attend. And it's during the day, so the astronomers had nothing to look at because they only work at night. They're vampires. So we started out our program, and I don't recall the gentleman's name, but he's one of the top guys on the astronautics or the deep space stuff, for the National Science Foundation. And he had just returned from a worldwide conference on exoplanets, and every telescope that was used for looking for exoplanets, they had representatives at this conference. And using all the information brought in from all these different locations all around the world, including China and Russia and wherever, and using proven mathematical formulas for that have been proven to be fairly accurate. They estimate now, based on all the information that was given out at this conference, that for every star in the universe, and you can't even put all the decimal points in the Pentagon, that there's that many stars, okay?
Yeah, again, wrap your head around that.
Yeah, and out of that incredible number, they calculate there's 1.5 planets. And based on again, proven mathematics and theory, they estimate that there are 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar sized brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And if we're the only ones, to quote Jodie Foster's character in Carl Sagan's Contact, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space. So if the universe in fact is 60 billion years old, not 13.8 billion, there's a lot of people that are way ahead of us on technology. And just think where we've gone from the Wright brothers, 1903, just to 2003. I mean,
unbelievable.
We had something that went, it was 152 feet, and then we had an airplane that retired in 1990 that could go from Los Angeles to New York in 47 minutes. Now they didn't go full blast all the way across because they didn't know if they got a full tank of gas. That's the Blackbird on its retirement flight, and Ben Risch told me that if they had known they got a full load of fuel and if they'd have redlined everything, they could have flown from Los Angeles to Washington D.C. in 47 minutes. It's 5.5 hours on a commercial airplane.
It's almost unimaginable, and yet we have to entertain as we go forward that these are possibilities that we will be facing, if not now, in the very near future. Jim, unfortunately, we're out of time for this evening, but I want to thank you very much for coming on. Before we go, can you let everybody know where they can find you? I know that you frequent Cosmic Neighbors on occasion. There are a couple other podcasts I think that you're working with. Give us a little insight on where we can find you, and where can they buy your books?
Well, the most important thing about buying my books is go to Amazon, and books by James C. Goodall. That was my hardbound, or Jim Goodall. And I don't know if all my titles are available there, but all my hardbound ones are. The president or the vice president general manager of the Skunk Works, Jeff Babion, he said his 2 favorite books that are in his man cave that no one's allowed to touch are my book from Surfer Publishing on the Blackbird, and my 75 years of the Lockheed Skunk Works. So I'm in a lot of different programs as a guest. Anybody who wants me on, I'll be more than happy to go on with them. There's only one person, but he doesn't have a podcast, so I don't have to worry about it. And I don't care if you have one person who's signed up to be on your podcast or to listen to it, or you have 1 million. I don't care. If we're having a one-to-one conversation, that's what's important to me, and I don't turn anybody down. But I'm on Facebook, and that's the only thing I'm on. I get a lot of pests in there, and I got a lot of people who know it all. And I mean, I've even had people quote me, and I said, "Well, that's the wrong quote." "No, it's not. I know him personally." I said, "I've never met you." "Well, who are you?" I said, "The person you're talking about." "Oh." So, I mean, it's flattering it's flattering when they use my name in vain. But I'm 78. I do a lot of things that most 78-year-olds don't do. Going in the jungle is one of them. Snooping on the government's another one. And I go on my road trips. I'm going on a 3,500-mile road trip here in August, so I'm going to have a good time.
We certainly wish you much luck with that, Jim. And of course, we look forward to you coming back and talking at length about some of these subjects that we've just barely touched the surface with tonight. But
you and I,
by the way, thank you. Huh?
You and I didn't talk about hardly at all about Belize.
We only just, here's Belize right here, and we're just that was all it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's okay, because yeah, a lot of what you imparted was very important for us to discuss and get into. And I think that's okay. I think we can come back on the next one and we can focus on Belize. But I mean, it's okay if we go off in a peripheral sense too. Belize, as subject itself, what we're doing, the efforts that we put in, that's probably, like you said, an entire show in and of itself, right? So
Yeah.
we'll look
Yeah.
forward to that because we have some developments that we're working on now, things that may smooth out and pan out within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks here that to some degree we can speak on, but at least we can infer, what's happening progressively
Yeah.
with, what we're doing with Belize. But again, once again, thank you so much, mate, for coming on.
Hey, it's my pleasure. We bonded in Belize. It was. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that trip, and I had at least 28 to 50 years on everybody that was in that group.
Yes, that's
Oh,
true.
shoot.
And you know what? You kept up with us. You know what I mean? You kept right up with us. There was no question about it.
Except that Thursday of the Bataan Death March.
We all could have died that day, though. I mean, Jesus, dude. I don't know what the hell I know what we were doing, but fuck's sake.
If Jared would have had his heart attack there, that'd have been it.
Yeah. And the rest of us would have had heat stroke. And next thing you know, Hector would have been carrying us by our hair out of the jungle, two-fisted, could have been a very bad thing. But we'll talk more about that experience because I'd like to get into that with you, Jim. I think that would be something that we could jump into as a segue into what we're going to talk about Belize next time we get together. But for the moment, I'm going to take you off. If you have to run, I understand. If not, hang around. I'll talk to you after the show's over. But thank you once again for coming on, my dear friend.
Hey, it's always a delight. I know you wanted to meet me at one time, and we ended up spending 10 days together, and I think we had a good idea of what we're made of, and it was fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next trip.
Oh yes, and it will be coming very soon, or I should say sooner than we expect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'll pull you off for just a moment, mate.
And I'll hang in there for a few minutes.
All right. Cheers, brother. Thank you. Jim's right. I did want to meet him and connect with him. Oh God, probably a year prior to getting this Belize trip together, which of course I can thank Jared for solely. The orchestrator of such a trip. Absolutely amazing that we were able to do that. But timing is everything. And when I went to, I think we were in Texas, Jim and I had the same layover, and we were eventually going to be taking the same plane. Once we realized that we, hooked up and we sat down and had a nice lunch. Well, it was lunch anyway. I won't say it was nice. Regardless, it all started with a hamburger that might not have been so good. But let's just we'll save that for another point. Point of what I'm trying to say here is that Jim and I did become very good friends, spending that much time out in Belize. It was just absolutely amazing and indescribable. The time that we've spent with everybody that was there, and we will get into that a little bit. We've heard a little bit from Jared. You guys have heard me talk about it a bit, but there's so much more to go into that we're holding tongues on because we want to present this in the correct way. I did promise that I was going to show this shirt again from the Bridgewater Triangle Paranormal Investigators. Okay, you can go over to their channel or their website and you can pick up this shirt. Fantastic. Harry Green sent it to me. I received it yesterday. Absolutely love it. Fits perfectly. I know it's an XL, but damn, it fits well. And I don't think the shirt runs big. I'm not that big myself. But that being said, it's awesome. So go ahead and support those guys too. If you don't want the shirt, go ahead and just hit the subscribe button and support them that way too. I 100% back them and everything they do, as I said before. Now, moving forward, very quickly, I'm going to tell you that we have definitely secured what we need to do in Montauk. I have a feeling this is going to be very fruitful. There are a lot of people that are headed down that way during the 5-6 days that we'll be there. And I do intend to go live at a certain point. Let's see what we can do. I want to get some of these interviews and I want to talk to some of the people that are going to be there because the stories that these folks have are absolutely unbelievable. People like James Rink, Alondra Markman, who's been on the show, Arkham Rawood, will be there, and a handful of other folks. It's just going to be absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to take you all in with me on this journey. I would say it's a ride, but it's going to be much more than that. And the documentary, finally, will be finished after this trip. And Scotty B, I don't think I ever forgot about you, my friend, and what you've done for us, on that last trip in. I still thank you. And believe me, you'll be one of the first to screen this damn thing. And you'll enjoy it, I have a feeling. But until next time, folks, which will be next week, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Stay explorative, stay inquisitive, and of course, as Damian Gray from Black Rose Productions would say, question everything. I like it. Simple. Neat. And if you could taste it, it might be sweet. All right. God, if you can't make yourself laugh, then what the hell are you doing, right? All right. See you next time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the donations, moderators, and veterans alike. Yes, I'm stealing that from you, Rich. Thank you. GoFund, by the way. Go check out GoFund. Cheers and ciao.